are you? The funeral has started."
I'm on a vacation abroad celebrating my mom's birthday.
The sudden farewell to my father, who raised me all by himself, was something I wasn't prepared for. Even though he was always busy with work, he showered me with love, and I still love him to this day. However, my husband and mother-in-law, Emily, didn't care about my feelings at all and laughed at me over the phone while I was grieving. I felt more disappointment than anger, and I lost all strength in my hands. At that moment, the one who was angrier than anyone else was my father-in-law, Casey.
What?
Usually, Casey is always smiling, but at this time his face was twisted in anger like a demon. And then Casey said something completely unexpected.
Let's sell the house and leave those two with nowhere to return to. People like them aren't family.
After my father's funeral ended, Casey immediately started taking action. What followed was a relentless punishment that left my husband and Emily's lives in complete chaos. My name is Kate Smith. At 30 years old, my life has been a monotonous routine between work and home. I've been working at a company that can't even be called a good work environment, and have missed out on any great relationships for the past 10 years. My father, Jack, was very worried about me.
Hey, don't you want to get married?
It's not that I don't, but work keeps me so busy that I don't really have the chance to meet anyone. It's a bit disappointing, but I'm happy spending time with you, Dad, so it's okay. Currently, I live with my father in our family home. My mother passed away when I was young due to illness. It was so long ago that I don't even remember it. So to me, my father was my only family. Now, my father is skilled in cooking and household chores, but it's surprising to think that he struggled a lot in the beginning. My father, who balanced work and raising a child, must have had much more difficult days than I do now. Thinking about that, I feel like I want to value the time with my father more than my own happiness. One day, my father brought up a marriage proposal to me.
My colleague's son is looking to meet someone. How about just meeting him?
At first, I was just thinking of meeting him to make my dad happy. But when I saw the man for the first time, I was instantly attracted to him. His name was Tanner Smith. He's 2 years younger than me and is supposed to be the next president of his father's company. He's a promising young man. With his bright personality, we quickly hit it off, and after a few meals together, Tanner proposed to me. And so, before I knew it, I, who had been far from love until now, was suddenly getting married. Our marriage was celebrated by many, including my friends and colleagues. Among them, my father was the happiest for us. I was really surprised when he gifted us a house from the real estate he managed.
This is your new home, Kate. Build your own family and create happiness together.
Don't be so formal, Dad. You'll make me cry. I couldn't help but tease my father, who spoke with such heartfelt words. With everyone's blessings, I felt like I had no choice but to be happy. And so, my married life, which started with such determination, was truly happy at first. However, about a month into living together, I began to see some unpleasant sides of Tanner. The thing is, I have to leave for work early. Mornings are always busy for me, but Tanner, using his position as the next president, would go to work late, so our schedules didn't match. Also, when I only prepared simple breakfast like fried eggs and toast, he would let out a big sigh.
With such a plain meal in the morning, I don't even feel like working. Can't you shake off that poor mentality?
If that's the case, Tanner, who has more time, could prepare breakfast himself. I talked to him about this many times, but he always gave vague responses and never once stepped into the kitchen. On the contrary, even though he got home earlier than me, he never helped with dinner or even brought in the laundry. He doesn't care if it's rain or shine. He would just lie on the couch until I got home. I know you're working hard, Tanner, but so am I. Can we please work together on the house stuff?
No way, our positions are different. I'm the next president, and you're just a regular employee. Why should we do the same chores?
Tanner laughed as he said this, even though I was trying to talk to him seriously. Seeing him not even glance away from the TV, I think I was already beginning to give up on expecting anything from him. In the midst of all this, Tanner suggested that I become a stay-at-home wife. Normally, I would have been happy to hear that, but Tanner said it in such a condescending way.
If you're that unhappy, why don't you quit your job? We can live on my income, and it's not like your job is something that anyone couldn't do.
Having devoted myself to my work all these years, I didn't want to hear that my job could be done by anyone. But even if I told Tanner that, he wouldn't understand.
Since you're just earning a low salary anyway, it'd be smarter to quit sooner rather than later. Though I guess you wouldn't want to, since then you'd have no excuse not to do the housework.
Even though Tanner said this with a smirk, which bothered me, I also knew I couldn't keep working forever. If I had a child, I'd need to take maternity leave. Judging by how Tanner is now, he probably wouldn't help with the housework even if I were heavily pregnant, and I doubt he'd take care of our future child. Considering all of this, I thought it might be necessary for me to become a stay-at-home wife sooner rather than later to take care of our home. All right, I'll quit my job then. I'll take care of the house, and you can focus on your work.
Even if you don't tell me to, I'll still become super rich. I'm about to be the president after all.
After we decided on this division of roles, Tanner started to look down on me even more. If he didn't like the food I made, he'd post pictures online with nasty comments, and he'd even tell his colleagues and relatives about it. He ignored all the effort I put in and only spread negativity, and I was getting fed up with his behavior. Moreover, after I became a stay-at-home wife, I had even more worries. It was about my mother-in-law, Emily. About a month after I quit my job, Emily suddenly started coming over to the house. It didn't feel like she was coming over to hang out. It felt more like she was asked to watch over me, constantly keeping an eye on everything I did. Our relationship was already stressful enough, but being stared at like that made it even more stressful than work. When I let out a small sigh, Emily glared at me and scolded me harshly.
You don't even work, but you're acting all tired?
I'm sorry, but I can't relax with you watching me all the time. It feels like I'm being monitored.
You are being monitored. I'm here to train you to be a wife worthy of my son.
To Emily, I was nothing more than a housekeeper to make Tanner's life easier. She had always been overprotective, so I wasn't surprised. But I really hoped she would cut back on the visits. I decided to ask Tanner to gently convey my feelings to her. I get that she's concerned, but it's not pleasant for me to feel like I'm being watched. Could you, as her son, kindly ask her to ease up? The next day, Emily stormed in early in the morning, her face red with anger.
Kate, how dare you tell me not to come here when I'm only thinking of your best interests?
I jumped up in surprise at Emily's fury. Next to me, Tanner was laughing at my reaction.
I told Mom exactly what you said, that you didn't want her coming over because it makes you uncomfortable.
What? You knew she'd get mad if you said it like that. Why would you do that?
Because it seemed like it'd be funny. And look, it is hilarious.
No matter how much I tried to convince Emily, she would only believe Tanner's words. Since that day, the pressure from Emily intensified. Sometimes I was even summoned to their house to do cleaning and laundry. I think I endured this kind of life for about 6 months. One day, I suddenly realized that I hadn't been in touch with my father much since getting married. I want to talk to Dad, but I don't want to worry him. He even got us a house, and I feel bad for letting him down. I pulled up my dad's number on my phone multiple times, trying to call him, but then I'd rethink it. I was struggling, and if I called him now, I'd just end up complaining. I decided to hold off for a little longer until I could talk to him with a smile. I kept putting off contacting my dad, but this would turn out to be the biggest regret of my life. A week after I decided not to call him, I suddenly got a call from the hospital saying that my dad had collapsed. The hospital was at a university far from home, and I couldn't get there without a car. Since Tanner had taken the car to work, I contacted Casey on the off chance he could help. As it turned out, he was off that day and was able to drive me to the hospital.
I can't believe Jack collapsed. You must be so worried, but try to stay strong, okay?
Yes, thank you. It took about an hour by car, but we finally made it to the hospital. We rushed to the room, out of breath, but my father was lying there, connected to multiple tubes, unable to wake up. That's when the doctor told me something shocking. Apparently, my father had been suffering from a serious chronic illness for some time. He had been secretly undergoing treatment since before I got married. As his condition worsened, it seems my father knew this was coming. Dad, did you try to arrange a marriage for me so I'd be happy before this happened to you? If that's the case, I didn't want this kind of married life. I wanted more time with my dad. I wanted to tell him that, but he wasn't waking up. I deeply regretted not calling him sooner. As I was sitting there by his bedside, feeling down, Tanner called me. When I looked at my phone, I realized it was already evening. I'm sorry, something urgent came up, and I won't be able to come home yet.
What? How should I know? Why isn't my dinner ready?
Tanner, not listening to a word I said, just kept yelling at me. Casey, who was next to me and overheard our conversation, looked at us in disbelief. Actually, my dad collapsed and is in the hospital. He hasn't woken up, and it's serious. I want to stay with him today, so could you handle dinner?
No, you're a stay-at-home wife, right? You don't get to slack off. Just come home and take care of the houses, then do whatever you want.
Casey, unable to bear Tanner's words any longer, took the phone from me and scolded Tanner.
I've been quiet this whole time. But what on earth are you saying? Kate's dad collapsed, and she's worried sick.
Casey handled the situation with Tanner, and I ended up staying at the hospital that night.
Let him handle the house himself. Only you can take care of Jack, so please stay with him. I'm heading home, but if you need anything, just let me know.
Having been treated like a servant by Tanner and Emily, I was so touched by Casey's kindness that I almost cried. I thanked him sincerely and focused on taking care of my dad. Thanks to that, I was there when my dad briefly woke up. We were able to talk like we used to, even laughing together at times. After about an hour, my dad closed his eyes as if content, and he passed away. It all happened within a week of me being called to the hospital. After my dad's death, I had to quickly arrange the funeral. I asked Casey for help, and he immediately agreed.
Thank you for relying on me. Of course, I'll help. I'll temporarily close the company. This is an important farewell for the family.
I also contacted Tanner. When he answered the phone, he sounded extremely annoyed.
What? your dad passed away, so you're finally coming back. The laundry is piling up, so hurry up.
What kind of response is that? Anyway, my dad's funeral is tomorrow. You'd better be there.
Yeah, the company's closed, so I'm free. I'll drop by.
Even though he didn't have much of a relationship with my dad, his attitude was still appalling. I figured Emily would have a similar reaction, so I left it to Tanner to tell her. And so, the day of my dad's funeral arrived. Even though it was sudden, many people came to pay their respects to my father. He was always well liked by his friends and colleagues, so I'm sure he would be happy to see this. I felt proud as his daughter, but there was still one important person who hadn't shown up yet. Finally, the funeral started, and I could no longer wait. I couldn't help but call that person. Hello, Tanner? Where are you? The funeral has started. Despite all the reminders, Tanner and Emily hadn't shown up. On the other hand, Casey had arrived earlier than anyone and was helping me with everything. Apparently, Casey had heard that Tanner would be coming late with Emily. However, he didn't think they would actually miss it. When I asked where he was, I got a reply through a bad connection. Since it was hard to hear, I started the recording feature just in case.
Sorry, but we're not gonna make it today.
What do you mean?
We're on an overseas trip for Mom's birthday.
At first, I couldn't understand what Tanner was saying, but I could hear Tanner and Emily laughing over the phone. I couldn't find the words to say anymore. I just let their words wash over me.
Actually, Mom's birthday is next month. We wanted to take a trip somewhere, but I've been busy with work. Since I finally got a day off today, we decided to take a quick trip.
Traveling seemed way more fun than attending some funeral. Sorry for not being sorry.
I could hear Emily's cheerful voice as well. Too shocked to respond, Tanner continued.
So yeah, you handle the funeral. When we get back from the trip, I'll bring a souvenir to your dad's grave. That should be fine, right?
Without waiting for my reply, Tanner hung up. I tried calling him back, but he didn't answer. I couldn't believe how completely inconsiderate he was. As I was struggling with what to do, Casey came to find me.
Kate, if you don't come soon, it'll be over. What did Tanner say? Did they get stuck in traffic or something?
Not knowing how to explain, I played the recorded conversation with Tanner. As Casey listened, I saw an expression of anger on his face that I had never seen before.
What?
Seeing usually kind Casey so angry made me stand up straighter. I was scared, but more than that, I was touched that he was this upset for my dad.
This has to be some kind of joke, right? I can't believe even Emily would say something like that.
No, Emily and Tanner are always like this around me. They don't care at all about me or my dad. As I explained what had been going on, Casey nodded firmly as if he had made a decision. Then he said something unbelievable.
Let's sell the houses and leave them with nowhere to return to. People like that aren't family.
What? Sell the house? Are you serious?
Yes. I don't care what happens to people who can do something like this. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive them.
True to his word, Casey started the process of selling their family home right after the funeral. Some of the funeral attendees worked at the same real estate company as my dad, and when Casey explained the situation, they were more than happy to help. I also decided to sell the house Tanner and I shared. There was no way our relationship could be repaired. Even if I stayed in that house after the divorce, I wouldn't be able to escape the bad memories. As Casey and I were filling out the paperwork, I asked him why he was so angry on my behalf.
Actually, your father, Jack, helped me when I couldn't even afford a meal. He's the reason I'm alive today.
Apparently, when Casey was younger, he failed in business and lost everything. My father found Casey in a park after he had lost his home and everything else. He took Casey in as one of his employees and paid him a salary. Later, when Casey decided to start a business again, my father gave him a piece of real estate for next to nothing. That property became part of the company Casey still works for today.
If it weren't for Jack, I wouldn't be where I am now. Even when I tried to repay him, he never accepted it. So when you came to me with your concerns, I was glad to help.
I see. My dad was always so kind. It makes me happy to hear that.
That's exactly why I can't forgive Tanner and Emily for trampling on his kindness. They need to pay for what they've done, both for Jack's sake and yours.
Fueled by this resolve, Casey and I finished the paperwork. Tanner and Emily's house was quickly sold, and we both temporarily stayed in a hotel. I could manage for a while with my savings, but I knew I needed to find a new place to live soon. A week after the funeral, feeling more settled, I looked through the apartment catalogs given to me by my father's colleagues. As I was browsing, my phone suddenly rang. It was Tanner calling for the first time since the funeral.
Hey, Kate, where are you right now?
Where? I'm just relaxing at home.
Don't lie. The house has been sold and all the furniture is gone. What the hell is going on?
He must have just gotten back from the overseas trip. Even over the phone, I could tell how panicked Tanner was now that he had no place to return to.
I can't reach my husband either. What's going on? If you're there, put him on the phone.
Casey isn't here. He's staying at another hotel.
This makes no sense. Why is this happening?
Emily, sounding like a victim, demanded answers, so I told her how furious Casey had been at the funeral. Of course, I made it clear that I wasn't going to forgive them either. I'll be filing for divorce with Tanner through a lawyer, so be prepared.
Divorce? You think you can threaten me with that when you're just an unemployed freeloader?
Even at this point, Tanner still looked down on me. It's true that if I kept spending my savings on hotel living, I would soon run out of money. However, I had already found a job and was set to start tomorrow. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not a freeloader anymore. I'm going to work and take care of myself.
Ha! Don't get cocky. No matter how hard you work, you'll never surpass me. You could have been the wife of a CEO if you had just stayed quiet. You'll regret your decision.
With those words, Tanner hung up. I immediately blocked his number, cutting off all contact with him. I wasn't going to call him again, and I felt justified in doing this. Anyway, I'd have to face Tanner again eventually. Thinking about how clueless Tanner was about what was coming lightened my mood a bit. The next day arrived, and it was my first day of my new job. Putting on a suit for the first time in a while, I felt my posture straighten. I used to wear one almost every day, but it was surprising how much I had lost the feel for it in just 6 months. After arriving at the office, I headed to the CEO's office first. The CEO kindly explained my duties, which helped ease my nerves a little. As I was preparing to ask more questions, taking notes, a man suddenly walked into the office without knocking. The man's eyes widened when he saw me. Well, if it isn't Tanner, what a coincidence to run into you here.
What are you doing here, Kate?
It was Tanner. He was looking more flustered than I'd ever seen him, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he turned to the CEO, Casey.
Hey, What's going on, Dad? There was a notice on the board. It said I'm fired and that Kate is the new CEO.
What's this about? Exactly what the notice said. You're fine. From now on, Kate will be the successor, and I'll be mentoring her.
Hearing it directly, Tanner gave a dry laugh as he staggered back.
Is this because I missed that funeral? It's normal to prioritize your own mother over someone else's father, isn't it?
I'm not saying you should prioritize one over the other, but the way you spoke about Kate's father showed me that you're not fit for this company.
Tanner gritted his teeth and glared at me. I could hear him mutter something about me being a snitch.
I regret it, okay? I just lost my temper that day.
I've heard from Kate about your usual behavior. You've been treating her like a servant, making her do all the work while you criticize her cooking. There's no point in lying now.
Casey cut him off, leaving Tanner at a loss for words. Desperate to take me down from the position of the next CEO, Tanner pressed Casey.
But why Kate? Even if I'm not fit, there are other more capable employees. Did you choose her out of pity?
No, I chose her because I judged her to be the right fit based on her skills. Surely, you must have noticed that too?
Tanner was once again at a loss for words after hearing Casey's statement. The truth is, after becoming a housewife, I wasn't just doing chores. It all started with small requests from Tanner.
Sorry, Kate. I really need to get these materials ready by tomorrow. Could you help me summarize them? I have to go in early tomorrow, so I need to get to bed soon.
Back then, Tanner wasn't as demanding, and I wanted to help him, so I did some simple paperwork for him. I was used to that kind of work from my time as an employee, so it didn't take much time. It was a nice change of pace, something I could do between chores or before bed. But those requests kept increasing, and the tasks became more complex. Before I knew it, I was doing work every day, including creating documents that required a detailed understanding of the company's operations. Meanwhile, Tanner continued to criticize me, saying I wasn't doing enough housework or that my cooking was bad. It's almost laughable. But thanks to all that, Casey recognized my abilities, so I guess I should be grateful that Tanner was such an over-the-top fool.
Tanner, I wanted you to become a respectable person, so I burdened you with the responsibility of being the next CEO from a young age. But you used that as an excuse to look down on others.
But I'm the chosen one, and I've worked hard, so what's wrong with that?
Casey sighed deeply as Tanner complained in a pitiful voice. I felt more disappointment than anger at Tanner's pathetic display.
Kate's father was a brilliant man who earned a lot of money. But despite that, he didn't look down on me when I was destitute. He recognized my potential and helped me. I wanted you to become someone who could extend a helping hand to those in need, just like Jack did for me back then.
To help others, you need to be fulfilled yourself. It was a lesson that Casey could only teach because he had learned it the hard way. Realizing that Casey wouldn't change his mind, Tanner rushed over to me and started begging for forgiveness.
Kate, I'm really sorry for everything. I'll change, so please forgive me. I'll do anything to assist you, whatever it takes. Just don't let me be fired.
That's a pretty convenient apology. No matter how much you apologize, it doesn't erase the things you said about my father. I'm not canceling your termination or the divorce.
But I've had my own struggles too. Isn't it a wife's job to listen to her husband's complaints? Wasn't I allowed to say how I felt to you?
It was clear that Tanner wasn't truly remorseful. He quickly covered his mouth with his hand, realizing he had said too much, but it was already too late. He repeatedly begged for forgiveness, but when he saw that I wasn't going to change my mind, he dejectedly began to leave the CO's office.
I'll at least get severance pay, right?
You're not getting severance because your termination isn't due to company reasons. Plus, we have recordings of your behavior, so there will be alimony. You should prepare yourself. Finally understanding, Tanner left, slumping his shoulders. After talking with Casey for about an hour, I returned to the office and noticed that Tanner's desk was completely cleared out. He had worked here for years, but it all disappeared in an instant. I made a mental note to never get so carried away that I lose everything like Tanner did. A week later, as I was slowly getting used to my new job, I returned home while it was still daylight. Though I had adjusted to living in a hotel, I knew it was time to find a new place to live. To my surprise, Emily was waiting for me at the hotel front desk. Of course, I had only told Casey where I was staying, and he would never have revealed it. As I stood frozen in fear, Emily noticed me. Just days ago, she would have either mocked or scolded me upon seeing me, but now she was waving energetically and running towards me like an old friend.
Kate, so this is where you've been living. I've been looking all over for you.
How did you find out? I never told you where I was staying.
I heard you were working at Tanner's company, so I followed you, of course.
She answered proudly, as if unaware that she was doing something wrong.
By the way, you've been doing whatever you please, haven't you? I get that you acted out of anger, but didn't you think I might get back at you?
Her unsettling smile made me tense up. However, Emily just kept smiling without making any move to harm me.
Honestly, I can't stand you, but if you take care of me from now on, I'm willing to forgive you. After all, even if we're just in-laws, you're my daughter. I need to make some concessions, don't I?
I'm already set to divorce Tanner, so I'm not your daughter. Tanner is your only child now.
That boy turned out to be useless. It was a waste to have raised him so carefully.
What she said about her own son was so heartless. Even though it was about Tanner, I found myself getting angry. Do you think of your child as just a tool for your future?
Well, that's how it ends up, isn't it? Every parent thinks that way, don't they? Including your father, of course.
My father is nothing like that. I've never met anyone like you before. You're by far the worst. Without caring about what the people around me thought, I retorted with all my might. The light vanished from Emily's eyes, and she took a step closer with an unreadable expression. I backed up, but quickly found myself against the wall. Terrified, I tried to call the police, but Emily snatched my phone away in an instant.
Who are you planning to call? We're family, so let's talk privately. I'm sure there's plenty to catch up on.
She grabbed my arm tightly. I couldn't speak because of the pain and fear. At that moment, Casey appeared. Apparently, I had left an important document at the office, and he had come to bring it to me.
Emily, what the hell are you doing?
What? We're just having a little chat. Women understand each other, right, Kate?
She was pretending to be casual, but the fear I felt earlier hadn't disappeared. When I started crying silently, Emily frowned in displeasure.
There you go again, making me out to be the villain. Are you still going to play the victim?
Emily raised her hand angrily, but Casey quickly grabbed it, stepping between us.
Tracking down where she lives. That's stalking. It's a crime.
What? I've lost my home and family. Where am I supposed to live now? Everything's ruined because of that woman.
Emily's voice echoed through the front desk area. Just then, the sound of police sirens approached. Realizing what was happening, Emily tried to flee but found the doors locked out. The front desk staff had apparently called the police after hearing the commotion. Seeing no way out, Emily suddenly began apologizing to me.
I'm sorry, I won't come again. So could you please not involve the police? My relatives live nearby, and they'll find out.
I don't care. You snoop around someone's house, get caught, and then have the nerve to ask for forgiveness? That's just outrageous. You're just like Tanner in that way.
I've had enough of this. Let me at least punch you once.
Just as Emily clenched her fist again, the police arrived and restrained her arms. Since she was caught in the act, they immediately handcuffed her. As she was being pushed into the patrol car, yelling the entire time, she was led to the station under the watchful eyes of the neighbors. At last, the fear she instilled in me was gone. Casey, thank you so much.
As long as you're safe, that's all that matters. I can finally face your father with pride.
Casey patted my head, and for a moment, I thought I saw my father smiling. Within a week, everything was finally resolved. I divorced Tanner, receiving $30,000 in alimony. Since he lost his job and didn't have any creditworthiness, I made him pay the full amount in one lump sum. Despite earning a high salary, he had absolutely no savings because of his reckless spending habits. He was already losing his income, and if I had allowed him to pay in installments, there was no telling when he might miss a payment or worse, skip out on the payments altogether. Tanner hated it, but he had to borrow money from a consumer finance company to pay me.
The fact that I have to take out a loan, it's humiliating.
His pride as a wealthy man was shattered at that moment. Once a man who swaggered as the next company president, he now struggles with job hunting and works multiple part-time jobs. He currently lives in a shabby apartment without a bath. I recently saw him working at a construction site nearby, looking gaunt and nothing like the man he once was. His hardships will likely continue, but he brought this upon himself. Meanwhile, Emily spent a few days in police custody. A restraining order was issued, so I don't expect to hear from her again. Since she knew my address, I was forced to move. I also demanded $40,000 in damages from Emily for the mental distress she caused. Emily hesitated to pay the moving expenses, but I added one more charge to the bill. That was for the medical expenses related to the injury on my arm. When Emily grabbed my arm to prevent me from calling the police, she gripped it so hard that it bruised. When I presented the photo of my injury and demanded compensation, she didn't argue. She may have feared that any further resistance would only increase the amount she had to pay. In the end, Emily paid $50,000 in full as compensation. Emily had been using Casey and Tanner's money under the guise of pocket money to buy luxury items without permission. She ended up selling everything to scrape together the money for the damages. All she was left with were worn-out clothes and tattered bags that were too damaged to sell. The polished image she once had was completely gone. Apparently, the moment she was put into the police car, some relatives witnessed it, and rumors quickly spread, leaving her completely ostracized. Now, there are rumors that she doesn't even have the money to rent a place and is sleeping on playground equipment in a park. She has truly hit rock bottom. The only ally she had, Casey, also divorced her. Penniless, Emily had hoped to rely on him, but he completely rejected her, saying he never wanted to see her face again.
I don't want to see you again. And don't go near Kate ever again. She's like a daughter to me.
With Casey's firm words, Emily had no choice but to back down, leaving her utterly alone. With no one to turn to, she lives a miserable life, full of loneliness and regret. As for me, I moved into a new house and started enjoying the second chapter of my life. I'm focused on my work again, putting in my best effort alongside the kind Casey and my new colleagues. I'm living a fulfilling life, though it's hard to find time for a break. Casey also moved into a new home in a quiet residential area, not too far away. He still cares for me like a daughter, and I rely on him as well. Speaking of which, it's almost time for the anniversary of my father's passing. I've arranged to take some time off and visit the grave with Casey. Although there were tough times, I'm incredibly happy now. I'm looking forward to telling my father all about it.